Hey guys, this is TV Siblings Podcast for Mr. Robot. This is Sid.
This is Swetha.
And this is Harini.
So we're going over episode 9, and the title is...
Conflict.
Yeah, I mean, I want to start off by talking about the title. I feel like we don't really talk about what the title means much, but I think in this context, I don't know what the conflict means. I don't think there really was a conflict in my eyes. But aside from that, I really did enjoy this episode. It was pure entertainment, and Darlene really brought it home. She was super clutch this entire episode, and fantastic hacking and just on the fly thinking on her part. But yeah, it seems like it's the end of White Rose. Who knows? That was, 4 seasons worth of Mr. Robot. This is kind of what it came down to, and they did it.
Yeah, definitely. I love how detail-oriented Sam Esmail is. One thing that I thought about after the episode is if you think about what an impossible task taking down the Deus group is, and how they broke it down into all of these different parts and all of these different episodes, and we'll go into later on how they pulled off the hack this episode, but I just love how they explained it all. We see so many times in other TV shows and movies how they gloss over the details, but I really appreciate as a viewer how they walked us through how to do something that seems so impossible.
Yeah, I love the episode too, and for the same points that you guys brought up, it was very detailed as far as step-by-step the plan that they were trying to enact, like you were saying, Swetha. And, Harini, I agree with you. Darlene really came through her plan, and we'll get to it, but her F Society video that she released at the last minute in order to kind of distract, but also keep everyone in the building was creative and perfectly timed for what they needed at the moment. And it was great to see the banter between White Rose and Price. I loved it. I loved seeing Phil Price kind of get the upper hand pretty much the entire conversation between them two, and White Rose basically being surprised or outplayed or outmaneuvered almost every step of the way by not only Price, but also Elliot and Mr. Robot. And I also think a small detail, Mr. Robot was great this episode. He was, I don't know what the correct words are, but he's kinder, more empathetic, not only to Darlene, but Elliot and what he's going through, protective of him, but also trying to be there for Darlene, knowing that she's worried about her brother, but also knowing that it's not his place to kind of say where Elliot is and what he's going through.
Definitely.
While also knowing that he has to push forward this plan as long as he can until Elliot's ready to take on that burden.
I love how supportive Mr. Robot has been this whole season, actually.
Yeah.
Whatever Elliot needs, he's willing to step into that role, and I absolutely agree. This episode is a highlight of that.
So let's jump into the recap of the episode.
So the first scene starts off with Mr. Robot in a hallway, and he looks very hesitant with a worried look on his face. And he walks down the hallway, enters the boardroom, and there's Magda and a younger version of Elliot. And Mr. Robot says, "It's not happening today. There's no point in waiting here now." So to break that down a little bit, it seems like they're waiting for a meeting to take place with Elliot and the other one, ideally, and all 5 of them together. And I think that just confirms what we've suspected all along. Then Magda asks, well, when will he be ready? And Mr. Robot doesn't really have an answer. He says, well, we just have to get through this hack, and then I can get through to him. And Magda asks, well, how are you going to get through to him? And this is where Mr. Robot says, I'm going to show him what he did. And I think Siddha has an excellent theory about what that could mean.
Yeah, I think actually we all arrived at this theory from independent point of views, but one of the first things I thought about was when Mr. Robot said, we'll show him, or I'll show him what he did. I kept thinking, did he somehow cause the death or kill his father? And I think that led Swetha to say, well, maybe he led to the leak at the Washington Township plant that caused a bunch of people to get cancer, including the death of not only his father, but Angela. But it seems like the best thing that could fit with the details that we have. I don't know how true it is. It makes sense as another way that Elliot could get back at his father for what he did. It seems kind of an extreme way of doing it and going about it. But maybe this is something that is another big secret that's being kept away from him. What I don't know is why telling him this would give him closure. I feel like it would maybe break him a little bit more, because then he would think, holy shit, I caused Angela so much pain by, getting my own personal revenge. So maybe that's like a con to why it's not true. But that was kind of my first thought.
I think it is true, though, because Mr. Robot keeps saying he's not ready. He's not ready. Like, it's obviously something really big, something that Elliot did that he does not know about. He's not fully aware of. And I think he needs to know, and it's probably something bad, but whether it's something good or bad, just to get closure, to get his whole memory back, get all the parts of his consciousness back, to become whole again. I think that's the whole point of this final season. And one thing I had to do was look back into what exactly happened at the Washington Township accident. And it was a toxic waste leak in 1993 that led to the deaths of 26 employees in the 2 years following the accident. Edward Alderson and Angela's mom being the two that we know, but several other people died as well. And I think that Elliot, as a child, somehow caused this accident intentionally to get rid of his dad. I think that that's the theory that I ascribe to most.
And his father died from lung cancer?
Mm-hmm. He died from leukemia.
Oh, he did. How
long does leukemia take before, what's your average lifespan with leukemia?
When adults get leukemia, it's pretty bad, actually.
So what's the timeline?
I think what happened was they got exposed to either radiation or some toxic substance that caused a lot of them to develop cancer. And it makes sense that they would pass within 2 years. I think that timeline fits.
So then maybe this theory might not work, because when we saw his father collapse, and we're assuming that's when he died at the theater, I believe they were going to see Back to the Future 2, right? Mm-hmm. And that was, release date was 1989. So that timeline doesn't work. If you said the Washington Township leak happened in 93.
That's a good point.
I don't know. They could always just be showing the movie again, though. It's a really popular movie.
I think they were watching it on opening night, though, or something when it came out. That is a good theory. I did not connect it to Washington Township, although, and this is getting way far ahead, but looking at the promo, Elliot does go back to Washington Township just for himself. I think he wants to go back to, investigate himself as an adult. And that could fit into your theory that he may find out something about himself there that he may not have known before. I thought of it in a different way, where kind of the first theory that Sitha was saying, that he did kill his dad, but not necessarily anything to do with the leak, but just like on his own. And that would better fit the timeline at the movie theater, because I do feel the character playing Elliot, young Elliot at the movie theater, is the person that is angry at his dad, is the true Elliot, not a persona that sees his dad who he really is a person that is fighting back. And it would fit in line that he would try to fight back all the way, and him finding out is not so much something to break him, but maybe to bring out the other person, because this to me fits more in line with the fourth or the fifth person being Elliot, and it being a more destructive version of Elliot, someone who is more aggressive, someone who needs this hack to be done, who's been pushing it from the beginning, from that scene that we see with Elliot and Darlene where he puts on the hoodie. That is him. As we see the guy, or the young Elliot in that scene with Back to the Future, he puts on the hood, he takes the Mr. Robot jacket. All of that kind of fits in line with that style of person, or that kind of persona. Even the Elliot we see now is a persona of himself. I think the true Elliot is going to be the one that isn't the persona, that is actually him, with all these memories, with all this knowledge. So that'll be interesting moving forward to see how that plays out. And sorry, one thing to add to that as to why I think it is that, and why it's not like a different version of Mr. Robot or a version of his dad, is because as they talk about here, Darlene is the only person he has opened up to or come out to is Darlene. And when Darlene tells Mr. Robot, or tells Elliot about this, she's like, yeah, I did talk to you about this like a month ago or a few weeks ago, and you didn't say anything about it. that tells me that Darlene could not tell the difference between the two of them. And usually she can tell the difference when it's Mr. Robot as his dad. So that means it must have been a version of Elliot himself.
That's an excellent observation. We see it in this episode where Darlene is very quickly able to identify Mr. Robot, but she did not know that this other person was not Elliot in this conversation 2 months ago when she was telling him about Vera. That's an excellent point. And just to close off the scene, so this whole conversation, they're just using the pronoun he, where we don't know like who exactly they're talking about. But I think that up until this point, they've been talking about Elliot the whole time. Like, when is he going to be ready? I'm going to show him what he did. And then Magda says, and that poor boy, we may lose him forever. And Mr. Robot says he woke up for Darlene, which means she might be the one who could help us. And then the scene cuts out. And I think this poor boy that Magda's referring to, I think that's the other one. And the whole rest of the time, they've been talking about Elliot. And so it's really interesting. We haven't seen much of the poor boy, that means. He's been in hiding, the other one. He doesn't make very many appearances. I think we were speculating, was it him, like, coming out multiple times? I actually think that it's possible that the only time we've seen him during the series is this conversation with Darlene. And we didn't even see that conversation.
Yeah.
So it's possible that we've actually never seen the other one.
I agree with that. And that makes us think, was he not here this entire time? Has Elliot kind of been asleep this entire time or just repressed in some way? Is the Elliot we're seeing not even the person that is Elliot? There's so many questions that came out of this.
Yeah, definitely. It could be, like you were saying earlier, that the Elliot we've been interacting with this whole time is like the broken version of Elliot that just can't deal with his really dark past and all of that. It's like the extremely repressed version of him.
Mm-hmm.
But the other one is one that's more, I don't know, at peace with everything that happened. And our Elliot's been like the dominant one this whole time. What I can't quite figure out, though, is if the other one has all of the information, why has he been hiding? And why is it that Magda's worried that he might not ever come out again?
So there are two definite instances where we know the other person has come out. The first one you already said, Swetha, was when he's talking to Darlene, but the other time is when he talks to Vera, right? Does he talk? I think he does talk to Vera at some point.
No, he doesn't talk to Vera. Darlene
Oh, no, he
talks to
doesn't.
Vera.
You're right.
Yeah.
So it's just the one time.
And it's interesting, like, why would he come out just for that conversation?
Right.
It doesn't seem all that interesting of a conversation.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And it led to pretty dire consequences. It led to him finding out about this whole thing about himself and his dad.
Correct. Like, it's possible that in the same way we were speculating that maybe Mr. Robot really didn't want Elliot to have this information just yet. But this is the thing, though. That theory doesn't make sense now that I'm thinking about it further.
Uh-huh.
No one could have known that Vera would lead to Elliot rediscovering the secret, right? So I don't think that there was any intention to it. And I think Mr. Robot probably is right. It's just Darlene. And he wanted to interact with Darlene for whatever reason.
There's something about Darlene. I just can't put my finger on it. Like, what is it about her it's like a trigger throughout all 4 seasons of the series?
Ooh, I just came up with a theory.
Okay.
Maybe it's that the other one wanted to protect Darlene. And so he came out and he's like, oh, okay, that's cool. Like, Vera, like, stay away from him. Like, don't interact with him anymore. And maybe he came out to protect Darlene in that moment.
I think we're also assuming that this other one has been dormant for a long time. I don't see any reason why he couldn't be the one that interacted with Darlene on Halloween night.
Yeah.
We knew that was an Elliot that had most of his memories, if not all of his memories. He knew who Darlene was. He seemed pretty okay in that moment. He was kind of laughing off to the fact that he had to go to therapy, Krista, for anger management. He was watching their old video that they love to do. And then when she gave him the jacket and the mask, things changed.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was also this other one. I don't know if he's a destructive version. I don't know even if he's the one that's at peace with everything. I think that you're going back to what you're saying, Hardy. What is the meaning of the title conflict? It probably has multiple meanings in this episode. But I think conflict directly relates to that opening scene. Elliot himself is in conflict.
True.
And his other fractional personalities are trying to make him whole again. I think maybe the other one is just maybe the innocence of Elliot, another aspect of Elliot that just needs to be reunited with the other half, this other Elliot who's damaged. Yeah, the one scene I keep struggling with is that theater scene. The one that was standing over his father, was that the Elliot we see now? Was that Mr. Robot? Was that the other one? Because how many versions of Elliot does he need to protect himself? Mr. Robot is there. I don't think this other one is there to protect Elliot. But maybe what you're saying, Sweta, could be correct. Maybe he's there in a way to protect Darlene. As far as why Darlene's a trigger, he's the only one of his family that's remaining.
Right.
The only one who really knows him. I wouldn't be surprised if Angela was a trigger in some capacity. But maybe because of the infrequency that Elliot interacted with Darlene. And he worked with Angela. Yeah. So maybe that wasn't a trigger anymore. But with Darlene, you hardly ever saw her.
So that's a really good point that you bring up about that Halloween night with Darlene and Elliot. He does act very different now that I think about it compared to how he is for the rest of the season moving forward. He's more like nonchalant. He's more like almost kind of has a rebel attitude. Like, yeah, whatever. Like, I gotta do this court order thing. It's bullshit kind of attitude, which is not followed up by the rest of the season. So,
I personally think, though, that that's Mr. Robot. I
really?
think that that's the birth of Mr. Robot.
No, she's talking about before he puts on the jacket. When he's just talking to Darlene.
Yeah.
They're just like smoking weed, watching the video.
He's more relaxed. He's more like, whatever. I don't give a fuck, you know? So that's very different to how he is for the rest of the time. And he's more paranoid the rest of the season. He's more, you know, on edge and thinking. He's very much in his head. He talks to us a lot. And she wasn't gonna say. Oh yeah, and so I think another thing we probably, like, I hope we're gonna get more information on, but clearly something happened right after that where he completely loses all of his memories, and we see that from the withdrawal scene. You were only born a month ago, and even from this scene, this episode in the beginning, they seem to imply that again, that he doesn't have all his memories. Something happened about a month ago that he doesn't remember. Like, he doesn't remember Darlene. Clearly someone or something inside of him wanted him to forget to the point where he doesn't remember Darlene. But I think she's the trigger, or the key in this situation. He had to forget everything in order to also forget Darlene. Something about her kind of striked everything else. I don't know what it is, though.
I think going back to what Sitha was saying, I don't think that both this other one and Mr. Robot are like both on the same mission. That to me is why I don't think the other one is the one to like come up with this hack and do all of this. Just personally, it just doesn't really make sense to me story-wise.
Yeah, I never said that. I never was.
Why though? He like put on the jacket and then talked about doing the hack, right?
But I think that is like Mr. Robot at that point.
When Darlene first shows up, that person, like Tyrone is saying, is a version of Elliot we haven't really seen at all in the entire show. Not since he was like a child, maybe.
Just to play devil's advocate a little bit more, though.
Yeah.
He's still incredibly lonely in that scene, we're assuming, right? Mm-hmm. He's wearing all black. He lives in that same apartment. I think that version of Elliot shares more in terms of personality than the Elliot that we're hoping would be like a more whole version of him.
I don't think there is a whole version of Elliot until they all come together. Mm. I think
that's interesting.
There is no... This other version of Elliot, it's not a whole version. He's not a peaceful version of Elliot. It's nothing like that. You can tell with how Magda's talking about it, saying, we can't keep going like this. I feel like his personality is slowly fracturing more and more and disintegrating maybe. And they need to come together in order to make Elliot who he needs to be as a whole person. I think that version of Elliot, yeah, maybe the one on Halloween night, yeah, maybe he's definitely closer to the version that we're seeing now, but he's definitely not as broken as he is now. He was, like, going back to what we were talking about, he laughs off the fact that he has to go get therapy, that he has to go for anger management. He thinks it's kind of funny, and him and Darlene are laughing about it. That's not the Elliot that we know currently.
Yeah.
He's a little bit like a Horcrux.
Yeah, maybe.
I had something. Oh yeah, I had a question for you guys. So Magda says, or actually Mr. Robot says in that boardroom scene, we just need to get through the hack, let him do the hack, and then I can talk to him after that. I don't remember the exact phrasing, but the way he said it implied that Elliot wants to do the hack and he needs this, like he needs to be doing this, and only after that he can approach him about who he is or whatever the thing is. But in my eyes, like just from last episode, he literally says, I can't do this. Like, I don't want to do the hack. Like, I don't want to do anything. And then we see that even further when we see Mr. Robot doing the hack for him for most of the time until he picks up the phone with White Rose. So is he talking about Elliot or is he talking about the other person?
Elliot came up with this plan to take down the Deus group, right?
Mm-hmm.
When he realized, okay, like, E-Corp is not the target anymore, it's White Rose, and we have to take down the Deus group. That's what this whole season has been about. And I think, just thinking about it on a human level, if you were, like, reaching towards some type of goal or some type of ambition and working, like, night and day to try to achieve it, but then something like what happened to Elliot, where he had this, like, really dark revelation about himself, broke him, in, like, 6 months, you know, so let's say he, like, survives and everything, he'd be like, oh, I can't believe I let... It would basically be like a weak reflection of his own character.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Mr. Robot wanted to help him out to kind of complete this goal that he's been working towards.
Okay.
I think he knew that Elliot needed to go after the Deus group, particularly White Rose and the Dark Army, in order to heal and get closure on what happened to Angela. And we see that when Elliot only shows up when White Rose dangles the bait of Angela being alive.
Yeah.
Right.
And then he finally gets closure in that moment, realizing this is what you did to Angela.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to do that to me. And now I own you.
I think that's true too. I also think that it's just a distraction. I think, you know, it's just something that's going on in the background, and Elliot's not going to be able to fully focus on himself when, like, this is happening. And obviously Darlene's involved, all of that.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so speaking of Darlene, the scene cuts to this, like, hotel room that, you know, Darlene, Elliot, and Mr. Robot have decided to make their base. And Darlene asks what Elliot's been up to. And they both kind of go back and forth, like, we've been through some shit tonight. And this is when we already talked about a little bit. Darlene recognizes it's Mr. Robot and not Elliot that she's working
Mm-hmm.
with right now. And Mr. Robot doesn't tell her. He basically says it's not his right to tell. And while they're in the midst of kind of talking about this, Philip Price shows up and he brings a USB of White Rose's project. And he asks Elliot to destroy it, saying that this was something very important to Angela and, you know, I'd like you to destroy White Rose's machine. Very curious what's on that USB.
Yeah, that was a very surprising scene, that Price came in and everything like that. And this is jumping a little bit ahead, but I didn't realize in that moment that Darlene probably doesn't even know who Price is or who he is in context to Angela.
Yeah,
that didn't even cross my mind. But I feel this USB and the project, I don't think Elliot or Mr. Robot are going to be the ones to destroy it. I think Darlene will be the one to destroy it for Angela.
I actually think this goes back to what you were saying earlier about the preview. I think he goes
the
to
preview for the next episode.
He goes to the Washington Township with the USB, with the intention of, because her project's there at the Washington Township plant. So I think it is going to be Elliot. One thing I wanted to comment on the scene.
I thought the project was in the Congo.
That's why he needs Elliot to ship it to the Congo, right? Before the end of the new year. Before the end of this year. I think Philip Price was going into this meeting knowing he probably was not going to make it out. And you could see that when he walked into the hotel room with Elliot. He just seemed like a person resigned to his fate. I don't want to say defeated, but just accepting. Mr. Robot was pretty aggressive with him. and saying, "Oh, you're making these demands," he kind of laughs at us. It's not a demand.
Yeah.
Why don't you do me a favor? And I thought it was almost he was speaking with deference
Yeah.
to Elliot, which I thought was a little odd, especially considering later on when he calls him a pipsqueak with a hoodie. He definitely doesn't think very highly of Elliot in a lot of ways. But in this moment, he kind of knew, I don't have any power anymore, but you're the only card I have and the only player left in the game who has some kind of power that can help me out.
Also, I think Pryce recognizes Elliot's value. He's the one person who can take down White Rose, and he's the one person who could destroy the project. So I think he's speaking to that element too. And I think we've seen this defeated version of Philip Pryce for a while. I kind of came to terms with the fact that if he wasn't killed, he would probably take his life before the end of the series. And so I think we've seen, unfortunately, this version of Philip Pryce for a while. But then the scene transitions to Pryce walking into the building to meet Jang. And this is when Mr. Robot explains the hack. He explains that they basically need everyone's phone number in order to initiate the bank transfer. Then Darlene will run a script to capture the 2-factor confirmation code from everyone's phone to complete the transfer. But in order to do that, they need to basically be in the vicinity of everyone in the Deus group, all 100 people. And this is the scene that, then it cuts back to Darlene, and this is the scene that Harney was talking about, where Darlene talks about missing Angela. And this was really sweet. She's just like, I just miss her. And she wonders why Angela never said anything about Pryce being her dad. And so, yeah, confirming that she actually didn't know that. And Mr. Robot in the scene says, maybe Angela didn't know either. And it's true, she found out moments before her death. Then it cuts back to White Rose, and they have their banter back and forth. He threatens Pryce saying, tell me what you're up to, and I'll allow you to have a peaceful death with mitotoxin. Otherwise, we'll torture you until you tell me what you're up to. And I researched this after the episode. Mitotoxin is actually a real poison. It's, by some sources, the second most potent toxin available. And
the first is ricin.
Yeah.
I really love the scene. This entire scene. I know it flipped back and forth a few times, but this entire banter back and forth between Pryce and White Rose was fantastic. It's kind of great because Pryce, I always felt throughout these 4 seasons, never had the upper hand against White Rose, but now he has nothing to lose. He doesn't care. Like Swetha was saying, I do think he knows he's not going to come out of this alive. So he really doesn't give a shit. He's drinking champagne. He's enjoying himself. He's got some good one-liners that he throws at White Rose, and White Rose is just not having it.
Yeah, so it cuts back to Darlene, and it's Darlene and Mr. Robot still in the hotel room. And Mr. Robot has figured out the Deus group is not coming to this building where White Rose and Philip Pryce are. And Darlene very brilliantly decides to hack Wellick, because Wellick is, a central member to this meeting that's happening of the Deus group tonight. And of course, he gets the notification of the location change.
Right.
And that's when they figure out the true location of the meeting. And Darlene's like, we have to go, we have to stick together. And Mr. Robot's like, no, I have to stay because I need White Rose's number. We need all the numbers in order to get this to work. So this is when they split up and Darlene heads over to the new location. It cuts back to White Rose and Philip Pryce. And this is when Philip Pryce drops the bomb that Wellick isn't coming to the meeting. And I absolutely love the scene where you can just see White Rose's smile slowly turn into a frown. I just love that. It's like happens so slowly, but then, you see that realization dawn, like, oh shit, this is part of the move, And this is when White Rose really starts to melt down. And White Rose's assistant tries reasoning with her, saying, like, we need to go. Like, we need to handle this situation. And this is when White Rose digs her heels in and says she can't basically implying like she's not going to accept defeat in this situation. She's going to figure out what Price and Elliot are up to and figure out a way to get what she wants.
Right.
And also the fact that she is not willing to find another way to ship her project to the Congo without Elliot's help, knowing that he can do it the fastest and that any other way would take forever. And he's tired of waiting.
Exactly.
That's why her assistant keeps inferring, and finally she just outright says it. You're just not willing to wait. We can find another way, but it might take a while. You just have to go through Elliot because you know he's the only one who can do it faster.
But I think that's why it's so beautiful, the episode that we get with her flashback. And, you know, it happened with her lover where he was like, I can't keep waiting. Like, this life is not for me, right? And I think ever since then, she's never been able to be patient. That's been like one of the driving factors for her. And so I think it's really nice that we get an understanding of why this is such a big part of her personality and ultimately her biggest weakness.
Yeah.
Her impatience.
And it was so great when, I'm forgetting the assistant's name, when she walks out on him. I'm so shocked that she was just able to walk out on him the way that she did. But it was so badass. And Price's line after that, bad management.
Yeah.
So great.
It was great. And then it cuts back to Darlene, and she shows up at the place, and there's really tight security. There's 4 guards guarding just one entrance of the facility, and she's like, there's no fucking way. Like, there's no way I'm just gonna,
in there,
disguise myself in there. And that's when she turns and looks and sees the Shift Control, which is like the meta hacking show that's within Mr. Robot. And that's when she gets the idea to do the F Society video.
That was super cool. I mean, good on Darlene. She sees that, and we don't really see... Well, first of all, sorry. Let me backtrack. It was really interesting. It was really interesting to see them kind of going through the Cipriani hotel or whatever the venue was. Of course, we get a nice backside view of Donald Trump, supposedly. And just like all these people, and we followed the waiters and waitresses. I think it was one shot that they did, and they totally make us think that Darlene's gonna dress up as one of the waitresses, and that's how she's gonna get in. And I'm like, yeah, that girl even looks like Darlene. This is perfect. But then they completely shut that down by saying, nope, like, you gotta go back in. There's security super tight that night. I really liked how they threw us off. They spent the time to go through that just to show how difficult it was. And then Darlene comes through by having a shift of plan and completely just acting on her toes. It was a nice throwback. It's like, hey, like, we used to do this stuff. Like, we used to do F Society and it worked. Why not do it again? So that was really awesome to see when she texted Ellie and was like, hey, turn on the TV.
Definitely. The one thing that didn't settle quite right with me, though, and Siddha thinks this is irrelevant, but when they tie F Society to this hack of the Deus Group, isn't it going to be really easy for the FBI to know who's behind it? Who stole all this money?
Not necessarily. They never knew who worked in F Society.
Yes, they did. Remember the whole board?
You're right.
That Dom had? I don't know, just a small point that that's the only flaw in the plan, that they're really pointing the finger at themselves, that they're the ones that stole all the money.
Right.
I think no one really cares at this point, especially Elliot, because he knows that unless he pulls this off, he's going to be dead. But yeah, just a little bit risky, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then it cuts back to Mr. Robot, Price, and White Rose. And Mr. Robot calls Price, and White Rose picks up. And White Rose tells Mr. Robot, I want to meet. And Mr. Robot, I love the line that he says. I didn't write it down, but he basically calls him out saying, the fact that you picked up the phone means that, like, I already have the upper hand. Which is so great, just, like, picking up on that. Like, you're already scrambling at this point.
Yeah.
And this is when White Rose brings up Angela. This is kind of like her trump card, where she's like, I know that this is the thing that might convince him to join my side. And she says, Angela's not really dead. And White Rose asks Elliot, do you want to see her again? And that's where we see Elliot come to the forefront. And White Rose tries to convince Elliot, like, I can take you to her, you know, really, really touching on the one thing that might sway Elliot a little bit. And it's in this moment of indecision that Darlene texts him, turn on the TV, which is so great.
Yeah, this is just a testament to the fact of how great of a speaker White Rose can be and how persuasive he can be, because I totally bought it. I was like, oh my god,
Me too.
like,
Me too. I was like, is Angela alive?
I will say I'm a pretty gullible person, but still, it was like, he was very convincing. I was like, shit, like, Angela's alive, like, she's gonna walk out any moment. You can even see, like, for a slight second, even Philip Price, he raises his eyebrow, like, oh. But then it's the same face that he makes when he hears Angela speaking. He's like, Angela, you've been conned. Like, why don't you see that? And you can see on the worry on his face that Elliot might be conned in this moment too, and he has no way to help him. And I was super worried about that too. After a while, I was like, no, Angela's definitely dead, but he just wants him to believe in a different world that could be. And I
love that. I love that placement where you're absolutely right. Philip Price is like curious, like, oh shit, is this going to sway Elliot? Because there's really nothing I can do about it.
Exactly.
Because they're on the phone with each other, right?
Yeah.
And I love that. That added an extra element of tension to the scene.
But it worried me so much when they hand the camera back to the hotel and it's Elliot on the phone. I was like, shit, like, Elliot, don't fall for the same thing that Angela did. Because he was in such a vulnerable state. And it was like preying on that vulnerable state that he is in. I was worried that he was going to be like, yes, like, I do want to see Angela. Like, I just want to be in a world that's not this world. But it was perfect timing, like you were saying, Swetha, that Darlene came back to save him once again. And
I was even thinking about your lump theory.
My lump theory? Oh, yeah.
With the Angela lump mirroring where she got killed in the first episode.
I mean, I was watching this with Dave, and I was like, the theory, I was like, it's correct. She was the other lump. Swiftly
but no,
shut down.
Elliot, he's very strong in this moment, and he's like, no, like, you changed her, and you killed her, and, you know, this isn't going to happen. I'm not going to work with you.
Yeah, so awesome.
Then it cuts back to Darlene, and another moment of on-the-spot brilliance for Darlene. Darlene sees where all the bosses, the world leaders, guys are parked, and she decides to hack the garage to, you know, basically create a blockade where they can't leave even if they wanted to. And I was wondering, I'm like, how did she do that? That's crazy to me that she just sees a garage door and can hack it. But what she does is actually she intercepts the signal from the remote control that the garage guy uses to open and close the door. And once she intercepts that signal, then she can block it.
Very interesting.
So really, really cool how, once again, they really laid out all the details of what they did. And so she blocks the door from opening, and this is when the Deus group members watch the F Society video, and they want to leave. They're like, oh, I gotta get out of here. And they start to pour out, and this is when Darlene starts collecting the numbers from the Deus group. And one thing I thought was pretty funny is, like, Darlene's, like, openly using Python and clearly, like, hacking something. Yeah. Just, like, in the middle of the crowd. Like, her phone's just out. She's just using code. But, yeah, pretty funny.
It was crazy. Like, the only thing I could think about when she was hacking in the middle of that crowd is, like, how is she doing this on her phone? This is wild. Like, I totally would have messed up and, like, had typos everywhere. So, hats off to her.
Definitely. I mean, I think Darlene is close to Elliot in terms of her hacking skills, on the spot, quick thinking, problem solving, so many different, you know, elements that we saw Darlene use. It was just amazing.
I'm curious as to how they both really got into hacking. Like, how did they both
that's
get,
interesting.
like,
totally.
are really into the same thing?
I've always wondered that too. After having such broken childhoods, like, how did they both go into hacking of all things?
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Yeah, I don't know.
And then Elliot starts to problem solve. How am I going to get White Rose's phone number? And he decides to hack the cell tower and get the list of all of the cell phones that use that tower, you know, within the last hour. And he sends it to Darlene to cross-reference with the list of numbers associated with that particular Deus group account. And finally, they get a match, and the hack is successful.
Yeah, I can't believe that. Everything that they've been working towards, essentially since the beginning of the season, has come to fruition for them. They actually did it, and it only took them two. You don't need the entire F Society, although they did play a small part in it, which I liked. It's a little bit of an homage to the original F Society group that could take down White Rose.
Yeah, it was like nice, not only this season, but kind of bringing closure to one of the storylines from the very first episode of the entire show. Them trying to take down initially what they thought was Evil Corp, but eventually became the Days Group. And so this seemed like closing the book on one portion, a major portion of the Mr. Robot story. And I think probably the remaining episodes will focus on Elliot and getting closure on him.
I did actually... At first I was like, oh, what are they going to do? Like, there's still like 4 or 5 episodes left, and a little bit of a Game of Thrones thing where they finish off the main storyline a little too early. But I actually like this. I like that they're shifting the focus away from White Rose and his project towards Elliot, because I think that's what this whole show is about. And there's still a lot more left to uncover about him and his past.
Definitely. And hopefully we get some flashbacks as well. So... I think it's actually perfect timing in this season.
Well, I think Swetha's going to talk about it, but I don't think we're entirely done with White Rose just yet.
Really?
Well, the final scene in the episode where the FBI agents are breaking into her home, I don't know. I wouldn't put it past White Rose somehow getting it away.
Yeah, I definitely took that as she's killed.
She could be. That was my first thought too. That if she's going to die. She wants to die as White Rose.
And in that dress. But the fact that the scene cut off as her Dark Army people were shooting at the FBI agents, that shows me that we're going to see White Rose again. Okay. Maybe arrested with the FBI. That could be something, but her story is not entirely done. I guess I don't know what more role she has to play moving forward. Like, her only purpose in life was her project, and that... I mean, it's not done yet. Obviously, they still have to destroy it. But I think after that, there's no room for her.
She could... Maybe one of the reasons she decides to wear that dress, though, is that she enters her machine. So that's a possibility. But yeah, to cut back to...
So she goes to the Washington Township plant?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she can't right now. Isn't she arrested or killed?
No, I mean, she could get away. She could have... In that big house of hers, she could have like a trap door somewhere.
I don't think so, though. It seems like they were already entering her room.
They're entering the home downstairs.
And there's like gunfire everywhere. It's very Scarface, where there's a lot of people shooting.
I think it's highly unlikely that she gets away, though.
I think both things could be true. I think there's like a 50-50 shot that she gets away or she gets killed or captured in that moment.
Yeah. I like where you were going with it, Swetha. I wouldn't mind seeing a showdown between Elliot and White Rose at the Washington Township plant. I could see that happening. I think they're going to face each other in person one more time.
Let me just finish off the recap and then we can talk about where this episode goes. So the hack is successful. White Rose doesn't realize this right away. White Rose finally, after much delay, decides to head to the actual meeting place of the Days Group. And as she's walking down the stairs, Philip Price is like, yes, we've won. And that's when White Rose realizes, oh my god, like all the money is gone. And she tries pleading with Price, like, please tell me, like, where's the money? Where's the money? And Philip Price is like, we won.
He's
and
like,
he has like a great line. He's like, seems like you just ran out of time. He gets so many jabs in this episode.
I know,
it's
I
amazing.
love it.
And then White Rose, in a fit of rage, just shoots Price in the open with like tons of witnesses probably.
Crazy assassination.
And then the final scene that you guys were just talking about is when the FBI shows up at White Rose's place.
So this is a tiny, tiny callback, but I really love the full circle of it all. Harkening back to season 1, when we first get introduced to Price, he's talking to somebody, I think Angela, about the picture on his wall of Franz Ferdinand, who gets assassinated in public. And that's what kicks off World War I. And that's basically how Price was killed too, assassinated in public, and it ends a huge regime of these really rich and powerful people called the Deus Group. And I like the voiceover for Mr. Robot as Price is being killed, that Rome has fallen.
That's an excellent observation. I really like that.
This is kind of a tangent, but I just saw this pop up on Twitter right now. US and UK take down Russian cyber hacking ring called Evil Corp.
No way.
Intelligence agencies in the United States and the United Kingdom work jointly to expose Evil Corp, a Russian cybercrime group.
That's real?
Yeah.
What the heck?
Happened today.
Oh my god.
It's kind of crazy.
That's
Do you think they were
wild.
inspired by the show?
Oh yeah.
Oh
for
yeah,
sure.
it has to be.
I mean, even on Twitter, they have a picture of Elliot looking around, like confused.
Oh my god.
So in the promo for the next episode, we see Elliot heading towards the Washington Township plant, or at least saying that he's going to go there. And Sid brought up the theory, what if when he gets to the machine, he interacts with Angela and he interacts with Edward Alderson, and that helps him to get closure on everything that happened to. It's also possible that at the Washington Township plant, going back to my theory that Elliot as a kid caused the toxic waste leak, maybe this is the moment Mr. Robot says, hey, you're the one that did this, and you're the one that created this leak and killed your father. Makes sense, because he does say, I'm going to show him what he did.
Another possibility is that he became aware of the Washington Township leak and then somehow slowly poisoned his dad to make it look like it was related. And he had nothing to do with the Washington Township leak.
It's possible, but
I just have a hard time seeing how them revealing this to him will make him whole, because then he's responsible for Angela's mother's death. It seems like another secret to keep away from Elliot. It's not worth bringing that up to him. It would destroy him. It would mean that he ruined the life of his best friend.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that he caused the leak. I do think he is responsible in some way for his own father's death.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm not sure exactly what that would be.
how would he show him what he did, though?
Did he say show or tell?
I think he said show.
show.
Yeah. He could unlock those memories.
Okay, yeah.
That makes me feel like we're going to get a flashback.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think it'll be similar. As when he goes to the Washington Township, he may see certain things that unlock those memories.
Or even it could be in the USB drive.
Yeah, it could be. It could be.
As to the first theory that you were talking about, Swetha, about like him potentially interacting with Angela or his dad, that would mean that you guys believe that his project actually works. Is that true?
I wouldn't be surprised if White Rose's project created digital versions of people.
Yeah, I mean, this is a little cross-pollination here from Watchmen, but could it be that they're just like plugged into the system a little bit and harvesting memories, and that's how they're keeping these people alive? And is that what Elliot's under? Is he like, plugged into the system somewhere, or he has like his own code or something, and he'll be coming out of that?
Major spoilers for Watchmen if you haven't caught up on that.
Not really, but yeah.
Kind of.
How about Inception? Very Inception-like. If you haven't seen Inception, too late. It's been like 10 years.
I think White Rose's project works. I think at least Angela was convinced of it. She saw some proof of it. And I personally think her project works. Maybe it was like right in front of us all along. Maybe that little version of Angela being simulated was the thing that convinced Angela. Like, oh, whoa, like I interacted with this girl and she's a version of me that was like created by this machine. That type of thing.
That scene still bothers me.
Yeah.
Why didn't she make any like moves or show any signs of knowing that it's her as a young child? I don't get it. Should we get to feedback? One really good one that Bam Bam put up that I need to rewatch and take a look at is, he says Mr. Robot has two shadows in the hallway. That'd be a really interesting detail if they did put that in. Very specific.
Yeah, there is something he noticed that I noticed for the first time, and maybe it's always been there, but the P within the R on Mr. Robot. I guess I've never noticed that, but I remember on this episode in particular, I noticed it.
Isn't there
like,
always a P and an R?
There might have been. I just have never noticed it for some reason till this episode.
No, but is that how you make an R?
No, in like the logo, like there's a fully formed P that's untouched with the R around it.
Oh. Huh.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess I have to look at it again.
So one of Bam Bam's questions is, when Mr. Robot called, did he know White Rose would pick up? Does White Rose know who Mr. Robot and the other personalities are? Have they met in the multiverse?
I don't think so. I think he's very much self-absorbed into his own needs and wants, and this doesn't really fall in line with that.
Yeah, I think actually White Rose would be pleasantly surprised if she knew that Elliot had another personality.
I think it'd be easier to convince him as well if she knew about this, and she would have said that in this episode.
One thing I forgot to mention is one thing I've always liked about Philip Price versus White Rose. Philip Price doesn't really lie to you. He may withhold information if he feels like, I don't want to say that right now. But if you ask him a question, he gives you a very blunt answer often. And I think that's what goes back to his line at the end of the episode where he says, I always told you I'm a mercenary. I'd rather see you lose than myself win. While White Rose seems like she will lie in order to get what she wants. And so I think that's why I always go back and forth. Was she lying about what she said? The only thing that bothered me when she said, why don't you talk to Angela yourself? Hear it in her own words. That is a pretty strong bluff to give Elliot if you're not willing to follow through on that. That one made me question some things.
Oh, definitely. I was like, oh shit, Angela. Another theory that Bam Bam brought up is Darlene airplane theory from Reddit. We don't really go on Reddit, so I'm not familiar. I don't know, Sid or Sweta, if you know what this is referring to.
No, I've been avoiding Reddit completely. I don't know about you, Sweta. Reddit, yeah. I don't want to go unspoiled this season, ever since the prison theory where they revealed that, or they figured that out early.
I think another thought that Bam Bam had that I agree with, I believe White Rose, that he's got good intentions.
Yeah.
He just wants love, and he wants for everyone who wants love and wants peace to be able to get it. And I think that's true. I think at the end of the day, White Rose wants a world where everyone is happy and fulfilled. And we clearly know what that would mean for her to be able to be openly transgender and to be able to love the people that she wants to love. And I think she truly does believe, if only Elliot knew that, we were on the same side. And I want Elliot to be happy and fulfilled too. So I like that theory a lot.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it also goes back to when she says to Elliot, let's stop being enemies and be friends. Let's stop this fighting. We're actually on the same side and have the same objectives.
And Harney, you alluded to this a little bit too. Bam Bam said this totally could have been the series finale.
Yeah.
Where do they go from here? And does Elliot do something with the project?
That'd be interesting if he doesn't destroy it, but alters its mission in some way.
Or what if White Rose believed if she showed Elliot everything that they've been working on, what the project's about, he would be aligned with White Rose. I'm very curious to see Elliot's reaction when he sees the plan. The thing is, he promised Philip Price he would destroy it. As much as, we have to debate whether he even cares about honoring a promise to Philip Price. But I took it as a promise to Angela.
Yeah, totally.
And so that's something he will follow through on, regardless of how he feels about the project.
The thing is, though, and obviously they're the same person, and it's all fine, but Mr. Robot was the one that was talking to Price at that time and saying, hey, can you please do this? It was Angela's one wish before she died. And I think that's going to have a significant key to play. And that's why I was feeling like Mr. Robot or Elliot's not going to be the one to destroy it. It's Darlene. I think she will be the one to carry it out, whether that's because Mr. Robot or Elliot even actually thinks that the project could be good or it could be shifted in a way that could be used for good. And that's what he wants to do with it. And Darlene is the one that realizes, like, no, this is not ever going to be good. This is what Angela wanted. I'm going to keep her in my mind and thoughts and destroy this for her.
Yeah, you could be right. I think maybe Darlene eventually goes to the Washington Township plant. I know in the promo, Elliot says he needs to go alone.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know if I think you guys follow Carly Chaikin on Instagram. And she said the next episode is the one episode she's been looking forward to the entire season. And she put a hashtag Domleen. So I think it actually might be a heavy Dom and Darlene.
Yeah, because I think Dom's in the
episode.
promo, isn't she? She's like in her
She's in the
hospital.
hospital and Darlene goes to see her.
Okay.
So we actually may not get a lot of Elliot next episode. It may be him like disembarking from seeing Darlene and going to the Washington Township plant, and maybe it ends on him. But I wouldn't be surprised. The majority of the episode is Dom and Darlene.
That's interesting. And I think we also see Leon in the promo. No?
Really?
I don't know. Maybe that's my wishful thinking.
And then Bam Bam has another really good point. They transferred all this money out of the Deus's account. Where did they put it?
Yeah, what are they doing with it?
Yeah, I mean, knowing Darlene and Elliot, more than likely they'll equally distribute the money amongst, whoever needs it.
Exactly.
To charity.
Yeah. So Mark had some good thoughts. No questions really, but just a lot of comments on the episode. But one thing that we didn't really touch on that I think was pretty accurate was his thoughts on White Rose. He says, for someone so calculated and cunning, he was looking like a level 1 boss. He was so desperate. It's so true.
Yeah.
He even knew Price and Elliot were teaming up, and he likens it to how Cersei went out in Game of Thrones. And I agree with that. He was very desperate. His own assistant walked out on him because of that desperation, because he was not seeing clearly and not wanting to see clearly. And I obviously I think we all knew that was going to ultimately be his downfall, which we did see tonight. I know you guys think that this is not the end of White Rose. That'd be very interesting if it's not. I kind of feel ultimately it is the end of White Rose, whether or not we do see him or see her again or not. I do feel like her storyline is pretty much done.
I agree with the first part what you're saying, or I guess what Mark was saying. This White Rose seems a little bit different from the White Rose at the end of last season that was willing to have Grant sacrifice in order to achieve her plans. But again, that's staying true to who she is now that I think about it, because she chose Elliot over Grant.
Yeah.
And in this instance, again, she's choosing Elliot's capabilities over anything else. So I guess it is pretty consistent. But I did feel like, yeah, she was being outplayed every single step of the way.
The thing that doesn't fit for me is White Rose's assistant is the one that's like, we should be keeping closer tabs on Elliot. And it was like almost too late at that point, right? Because when they started to tail Elliot, it was like the day before Wellick died, which is like earlier this morning in terms of the timeline. And why wouldn't you just tail Elliot all along? Like, you have multiple people on Dom, right? Why aren't you keeping tabs on someone who's such a big threat? Didn't really fit for me, yeah.
But another thought that's interesting is now there's no timeline. The whole thing was that Elliot was going to get killed, Darlene was going to get killed by Christmas, basically, unless they get this whole thing shipped, or unless he shuts down White Rose's whole plan. They've done that. So now he's not going to die within these 2 weeks. So we may not, the next episode may not be even Christmas. It may not even be the day after. It could be even January, or I'm not sure. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I think it probably is within the next few days or week, because, I mean, I don't know how long it takes to recover. It might take a while, but in the promo, Dom looked still pretty serious in her condition when she's in the hospital. And I'm assuming, the next day, Darlene would go see Dom, or as soon as she can see her.
Right.
To check in on how she's doing. And to let her know, hey, we did it. We beat them.
That's true.
And I still really like the theory where I think the series finale is going to be 1/1/16.
Elliot starting new as a new person makes sense to start at a new year.
Agreed. And so now that White Rose is kind of, I mean, this is kind of from my perspective, that he's kind of out of the way. I guess what I'm trying to say is that even if he is still part of the show, I don't think he's going to be the focus of the show anymore. And he's not necessarily a huge threat as he was prior to this episode. That being said, if he is kind of taken down, so to speak, what does that mean for Dark Army? Are they still a threat to Elliot and Darlene, even to Dom? Do they still have a hold over her?
Well, I think they mentioned that in the promo. I think Dom says something about Dark Army is still an issue or a threat. That's why I guess I assumed White Rose got away.
I see, okay.
I also think, just logically, if White Rose is going to get gunned down in that moment, why not just end the episode with her getting gunned down? Right? Like we saw Philip Price dying, and I think White Rose is an important enough character that we're going to see her end one way or the other.
I agree with that. That's true.
All right, guys, any last comments before we wrap it up?
No, I think that's it.
I'm really excited to see what Dom and Darlene come up with next episode. I think it would be great for Darlene to help out Dom in a way that's really meaningful and kind of helps their friendship.
You know,
Take her on a date.
No, more than that.
I really could have sworn I saw Leon in the preview. Sorry, I'm watching it really fast. Yeah, he's in the preview. Sorry.
What's he doing?
He's in the car driving someone, and he looks to his passenger seat.
That's cool.
Probably driving Elliot.
Yeah.
Nice. Team up.
Yeah, that's super exciting. I think we need Leon back. It's a very quick scene.
All right, guys. So thanks for listening. This is Sid.
This is Swetha.
And this is Harini. Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.